Presented for Power Forum, right? So today we are honored to have Angani Bachani come to offer some talk on Power Forum. It will be about internet in Kenya. So just in case you are tweeting, we are live on Google Hangout on air. So it will be live globally. And even after here, you can watch it. So we'll be recording. So at this juncture, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Asif Odila, so that he can be able to offer the talk. Welcome.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Riyaz. I work at Angani at the moment. And yeah, I think the topic for today is sort of the history and taking you through the build out of the Kenyan internet, which is essentially my work experience to date. Because what I have been doing for the last 10 years is building internet infrastructure in Kenya and around East Africa. How did I get involved in the whole internet thing? It's because I was studying in the States. I came back here for one of the summers, and I had really crappy internet, and the only place to get good internet was at an ISP. So I said I need to work for an ISP so that I can get good internet that you're used to everywhere else. And that's how I got into the internet space. The ISP that I joined at that time, this was in 2000, was Swift Global. I think what you realize is a lot of the internet history story is mapped into my story. So I'll just tell it as it is. And some of the lessons that I think are useful for you as well. For example, it's really by chance that I got into the internet space. I think when you're in university and thinking about careers and everything else, you probably have a better idea, but you never really know where you're going to end up. But the key thing is to follow your passion and what you love doing. I love being on the internet, so I went looking for an internet job. The ISP I got an internship with was Swift Global. Swift Global, I'm from Mombasa, so I grew up in Mombasa. That's where I live. And Swift Global was the ISP that hired me. I interviewed with, a number of them. Well, I interviewed with 2 others, but the others didn't even respond because they were not hiring, or I was a student, so they didn't want to give me work, etc. So the people I interviewed with, Africa Online, I didn't have enough Linux skills to get a job at Africa Online. We used to have this sysadmin who, came and asked me questions. The thing is, I had Linux experience, but I'd never used Linux in an ISP, so I didn't know what you do with Linux in an ISP in a real production environment. And then Swift Global sort of said, yeah, we'll take you on an internship, and you can go ahead, you can work in Mombasa, we'll pay you 5,000 shillings for your bus fare. So that's how I got started. It was fine, it was connected. But the thing I noticed is the ISP was running on Windows, essentially. Everything was running on Windows. And when we were studying in university, no one was running Windows, right? On all the production systems, it was all Unix, there were Solaris machines, all the servers were very different. No one was running Windows. So I said, why is this? And then the other thing that was interesting is every time the internet went down, they had to get into the router, reconfigure all the settings to point to the backup link. And no one does that on the internet, right? When the internet goes down, sometimes it feels like an eternity for it to come back up. But it's because there's a fiber cut somewhere or something or the other. But there's no one sitting at a desk reconfiguring all the routers so that the internet can come back up. When your internet goes down here, you don't have someone configuring the routers to bring you back up. So, those two problems is actually something that I had experience with. And we replaced a lot of the Windows systems with Linux, which was much better. It scaled better because they had problems. Their mail system would be down every day. And yeah, so we shifted to Linux. And now they had a nice stable system, scalable, and it was free. Yeah. And that's how my work experience started in 2000, sort of working at Swift Global. Now, the internet environment then was dial-up, right? There was a few people that had lease lines, a few customers. Does anyone know what a lease line is? No. Okay. A lease line is like a dial-up. It's on the same copper that runs your dial-up. It's just that it has modems that are always on. So it's like having your modem connected all the time. Do you guys know what dial-up is? You know what dial-up is. You guys don't know what dial-up is. Do you know what edge is? You know what edge is? Edge is faster than dial-up. Edge runs at 128 kilobits per second or 256 kilobits per second sometimes. Dial-up runs at 32 kilobits per second. So it's 4 times slower than edge. Yeah. So all of Kenya, the only way you could get connected back then was via dial-up. Unless you had 200,000 shillings, then you could get a lease line. The lease line just meant that it was always on, but it would be the same speed. You would get 128 kilobits per second. Yeah. How long does it take to download an MP3 if you have 128 kilobits per second? What is that? 8 minutes. No, it never took 8 minutes. You leave an MP3 overnight. One MP3. You guys are laughing. And that was, that's actually why you would work for an ISP, because it would be faster. It would be that much faster. So back in 2000, that was the state of the internet. My internet story in Kenya actually started a bit before. When I was doing college applications and stuff after I finished high school, I bought myself a computer with some savings I had, and the internet, the phone bill that we got for the month that we connected, just because we got on the internet, was 80,000 shillings. Because you would be charged 5 shillings per minute for your phone call, in addition to the fees that you would pay to the ISP. Yeah. So, if you're connected for 1 minute today on Safaricom, how many megabytes can you download? 60 times, what? 1 megabit per second. So, say 6 megabytes. So you download 6 megabytes times 8 shillings per megabyte. So 50 shillings. Right? Yeah. So then I went back to school. After that, I think there's a few things that came up while I was gone. The stuff we had done for automatically switching and stuff, a lot of the ISPs have now gone on and upgraded. They were using BGP. BGP basically lets an ISP have redundant connectivity. You all know how the internet works, right? The internet is just a connection of networks. So your laptop here is connected to a router session. That router is connected to an ISP. That ISP is connected to another ISP. The ISPs are all interconnected together, and that's what forms the internet. So instead of now you connecting to a single ISP and manually doing failover, then that stuff happening. And this enabled the ISPs to create what is called an exchange point in Kenya. Before, what happened was if you send an email to Michael, that email would have to go through your ISP. Your ISP had satellite links. So it would go through the satellite link to London, and then it would come back to Michael's ISP, back to Nairobi, and that's when Michael would be able to receive your email. The KIXP basically interconnected all the ISPs in Kenya. So all the ISPs got lease lines to Bruce House in town, and that's where the first Kenya Internet Exchange Point is. And that now allowed you sending an email to Michael to immediately just go to your ISP and to his ISP. All that traffic stays within Kenya. Eventually, it becomes an important thing because now we have fiber. Back then, it wasn't there, but now we have fiber. All the ISPs have fiber. That means that if you send a mail to Michael, it travels at a gigabit per second. And these days, at 10 gigabits per second between the two ISPs that you guys are connected with. Instead of it going at 1 megabit per second to London and then coming back. So, you know, after I was finishing, I got a call from global guys. They had been working on something that got some funding. The market was opening up at that time. Before what had happened is it was a monopoly, right? If you wanted internet, you could only go and buy internet from Telecom Kenya. Telecom Kenya was not called Orange back then. You know, it was Telecom Kenya. It was green in color. It was faded green, and their lines and their service was equally faded, so it was always down. And you were forced to buy your internet from those guys. So, you know, that was the monopoly. So all the lease lines we were talking about, all the dial-up, it was all run by Telecom Kenya. No one else could build a network. This is when Safaricom and Kensal had just come up, right? Around 2002, thereabouts, 2001. But the market was opening up now, right? The regulation was being set such that now if anyone wanted to build a network of their own, they were free to do so. And that was the project that Richard Bell and the guys from Swift Global had got funding for, is to build a private network that could be used for data connectivity for everyone. So we formed a company called Kenya Data Networks, KDN. And KDN, essentially what we did was we built out initially wireless data network. And we were doing some things with technology that no one had really seen before, because we had to be innovative. You know, we had to make wireless links behave like fiber, and at the same time, we had to make wireless links behave like lease lines, because all banks had ATMs that they had bought, which only worked with a technology called frame relay. And on wireless, you don't get frame relay, right? Because wireless is Ethernet. It's supposed to be for internet, data connectivity, all that. So we had to figure these things out because we had to connect the bank's ATMs. Before, the banks could only connect with Telcom. It meant that half of the time your ATM was not available. And so that's what we did. We built out this private network and started growing it. We basically became a nationwide network, covered towns one after the other. There was one bank that was riding on our network, and as that bank was opening a branch, we would be there the weekend before, setting up our site. So Katina opened a branch the weekend before. We were there putting in the network, and then they would activate it. So there was like 1 month where I was just traveling up country, setting up one town after the other, and that's what helped Equity Bank, because Equity Bank couldn't do any of their stuff without IT systems. They basically invested and said, we're going to build our banking on top of IT, and that's the only way we'll scale. And that obviously needed connectivity. So we provided the connectivity for Equity all through the expansion around Kenya. We would be there right the weekend before they activated the branch. And that's what KDN allowed people to do. KDN allowed businesses to finally get reliable connectivity. Because we had good uptime, because now we were in control of the network. We were able to give more capacity, so we were able to offer lease lines of 512K now instead of 128 and 256. It was still expensive though, right? Only the businesses could afford it, because we were selling 32 kilobits per second or 64 kilobits per second for 12,000 shillings. Yeah. Would you buy internet today if you were selling for 12,000 shillings? And you had to wait all night for an MP3 to download. But for businesses, that was very important because it was reliable. They finally had a reliable solution. Our target with KDN was to target banks, the financial industry, hospitality, and then we offered the platform to ISP. So any customer that the ISP wanted to connect, they could connect in Nairobi, Mombasa, or any other city, and we could bring the traffic back to the headquarters of that business. And I think that was the start of now more businesses adopting IT systems, because now anything was possible. When your internet is there and it's reliable, anything is possible. You can start building applications, or you can start using banking applications, financial applications, ERPs, things like that. And it did very well. I think KDN basically went, we started, the other thing was, no matter how much capacity we installed in the network, like we had a link that was running at 100 megabits per second between Mombasa Road and town. That was our backbone link. It only lasted us 4 to 6 months. And then we had to think about upgrading it to a gigabit. When you upgrade it to a gigabit, now you can't do more than that on wireless. You have to start laying fiber. So then we started now, laying fiber. And that was challenges of their own, right? You go to city council, you write letters to city council that someone hides in their drawer. For you to be able to initially start digging the streets of Nairobi, that was unheard of. No one had ever done a project where they were allowed to dig the streets in Nairobi. So you had to lobby, you had to figure out, and you had to do all these things in order to finally be allowed to dig the streets and lay fiber. And then once we did it, tons of other people did it, and now they do it every day. So, it was just that capacity, the demand for capacity. Once you provide it, there's no stopping it, right? And you'll see in the later part, when we started providing the capacity to homes, when Google starts coming in, the amount of users in Kenya has just been skyrocketing. The Kenya Internet Exchange Point, when it was set up, was running about 10 megabits of traffic exchange locally between ISPs, between Kenya and ISPs. Right now it's laughing. You have 10 megabits at home. So right now, the Kenya Internet Exchange Point does over 1 gigabit. Yeah. Every year, the amount of traffic has doubled at the Kenya Internet Exchange Point. If you look at, it's about, from going from 10 megabits to a gigabit is about 100 times increase over 10 years, right? And that's not even enough. The amount of capacity need is so much. The only thing that is limiting people is because they're limited, because it still costs money. Most people are on 3G. It still costs money to do anything on the internet on 3G, right? If there was unlimited access everywhere, I think that demand would be through the roof. So, yeah, I think KDN played a big part in the infrastructure space in Kenya and the internet space, because now it led to people rolling out fiber after KDN. Access Kenya rolled out fiber. Everyone else rolled out fiber. The most recent person to roll out fiber was Safaricom. And, for you to have good internet infrastructure, you cannot do it on wireless. You cannot do it on 3G. You cannot do it on any other technology other than fiber. The capacity and the demand and the need for internet is massive. And any other technology is not going to be able to fulfill it. So it's that we have so much fiber in Kenya, and we have it from many people. I think the next stage in the development of internet was the launch of 3G. So it started with Edge. And I think what that did was put internet in the hands of the mass market, because KDN, the fiber infrastructure, that was only good for connecting, University of Nairobi, companies in CBD, those places. But no one really got connected, at home, or where they could watch YouTube videos all day, etc. Although people are still watching YouTube videos in the office. They say that Kenya in Africa has the stickiest watching habits on YouTube, meaning the amount of time spent on YouTube in Africa is the highest compared to anywhere else in the world. It shows that all people are doing in the office is watching YouTube. So the next phase was, now, we sort of figured it out. I left KDN. I was there for about 2 years. I went to Rwanda and then Tanzania. So I did a bit of consulting work for some investors. And then in 2000, in Tanzania, we were working on a project that was very similar to what around 2006, Richard Bell came again. He's like, why are you wasting time in Tanzania? Come back to Kenya. We have an interesting project. We need to get broadband to everyone's home. And Africa Online had started doing something along those lines. They were selling iBurst. Does any of you know iBurst? I'm trying to gauge how old everyone is. Yeah. How many of you guys were at least 10 years old in 2000? Wow, guys, yeah, okay. Yeah. So, when it came to 2006, Africa Online had a product called iBurst. And, it was a modem. You could take it anywhere. It cost, I think, 10 to 15,000 shillings to buy the modem. It was about this big. And you could get 128K BPS unlimited for about 6,000 shillings a month. 9,000 shillings a month. And, doing really well. And we looked at that first, looking at, let's do this on wireless. But wireless does not really have the capacity to deliver internet. The whole idea with Zuku, which is now what we wanted to build, we didn't know it would be called Zuku. We were calling it Wildlife in the beginning. We had a whole branding campaign. The chairman of our board still thinks that it should have been called Wildlife. It's called Wireless Lifestyle, right? Wildlife. It was with the original Wananchi colors, so it was green and orange. But that all got scrapped when everyone saw the Zuko branding and everything. So we started building. With Zuku, the core idea we had was we need to deliver at least 1 megabit per second broadband to people's houses at 1,000 shillings. Yeah, $20. The dollar has gone down since then. Has gone up since then. But $20, we needed to deliver at least 1 to 2 Mbps to everyone's house. We started by doing that with wireless because it takes time to do that on fiber, but we knew that you could never deliver something like this on wireless. 3G, 4G, 5G, there's no technology that will be able to deliver real broadband to people's houses at a cheap cost, at an unlimited rate, right? You have to have fiber. So we started building fiber essentially. What you realize is when we started laying fiber and we started, bringing about this disruptive price to people, no one else was really doing that. There was competition in the market, and this is one of the things that you realize about the Kenyan market. You will find there will be tons of competition in the Kenyan market, but until one person comes with a disruptive idea or a disruptive price, the status quo will always remain. So you had 5 fiber providers, but they were all covering the same 200 buildings in town and Westlands. They were all providing the same priced internet. And in addition to that, they had fiber, but they were all providing 64 kilobits per second products and 128 kilobits per second products, right? Which is absurd. All that infrastructure, all that fiber sitting and just going to waste. So, we came in and the idea was just, let's get broadband to as many people as possible. We said, we're going to make money if we sign up 20,000 customers. So we're not going to make money by charging 100 people the amount we charge 2,000 people. So that was the whole idea, and that's how we went about building up whatever we built at Zuku. And I think that was now the next step of the internet growth in Kenya for the last X number of years has really been driving internet to the masses. Making sure every home in Nairobi has a fiber connection and has unlimited internet. Making sure as many places as possible have unlimited internet, because once you free people of that barrier of I'm paying per megabyte or I'm paying per minute, then people will do stuff with the internet. Otherwise, people won't really do stuff with the internet. And this is what sort of caused a lot of the growth for the 1 gigabit that you see at KXP. The bulk of that has happened in the last 5 years when you've seen an increase in the number of people that are using fiber connections. The network that we set out to build for 20,000 people now covers, over 100,000 people, with more than half of the people in any given area subscribing to the service at any given point. And the next phase is just to continue doing that. It's just to get more Zoopers out there across African cities. At least the main cities need to have fiber so you can replicate this growth across. And then the next phase of at least my career has been looking now at the content and hosting space. It's something that we've always talked about with my other partners at Angani. And what you will find is if you are unlocking the local fiber space, right? You build fiber to every home, but you still have to go to London because Facebook is in London, Google is in London, all the servers for all the major companies and the major content providers and hosting providers are sitting in London. It means that we've not really benefited from having lots of fiber here in Kenya. We still have to go to London to get our content. And London's far, right? It's like an 8-hour flight. So, you know, compared to driving, well, sometimes driving in Nairobi can also take 8 hours. But compared to driving from here to town versus, you know, and you're comparing it with the distance from here to London, it's the same concept for your email, right? For your email to go from here to town takes a fraction, you know, of time compared to your email. It takes about 1/10 of the time to go from here to town than to go from here to London, right? And that's the problem. That's why when you click a URL or when you point at something, it will take some time and then it will load, right? If your content was sitting locally, you must have used local servers in here or anything. You can see the difference. You put in the URL and immediately the page starts loading. Sometimes you don't even have to finish typing. So, you know, that's the kind of difference that it has. But on a bigger scale, if we have to continue buying bandwidth to get to London, that bandwidth is expensive. We have the submarine cables. The submarine cables, on average, charge you between $100 to $200 per megabit. And if you always have to buy for 100% of your connectivity, you have to continue buying from CCOM, from Teams, you have to buy bandwidth to get to London because all your content is sitting in London, then internet prices will never go down, right? The prices all over the world have gone down because the people who are doing content, Google, Facebook, all these guys open up data centers close to where the users are, right? So if users are in the US, they'll have data centers in the US. Users are now in Europe and London, they'll open up data centers in Europe, London. They'll make sure they're coming closer and closer to where the users are. Except in Africa, they're least concerned because there are no users in Africa. The whole of Africa is about 3% of all the internet traffic, according to iHub. The whole continent is 3% of the world's internet traffic. So if you're a businessman, you also wouldn't care about Africa, would you? And so because of this reason, is actually why we believe, and in what we're doing at Angani, we seriously believe that this is what is another missing link, to have local, reliable hosting such that businesses, developers, content people can all have places to put their content locally where now if you type the URL, it loads immediately, right? And that's what we're trying to do with Angani. The other interesting statistic is to show you that we're on the right track. Google started putting local caches in Africa around 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago. They started putting local caches in Africa. Once they started doing that, things like YouTube actually started working. Before that, so no, it wasn't Orange that upgraded their network. Google actually came and put local caches, and that's why YouTube started now working for all ISPs, right? Because now the video was loading from town. It wasn't loading from London. When they did that, they actually found traffic increased 10 times within the span of 2-3 months. Yeah? All those YouTube guys in the office were now suddenly watching more YouTube. So, you know, and that, but by having that traffic increase 10 times on the cache, it still meant that the traffic that ISP was buying to London remained the same, right? So that 10 times increase was locally. It was from the cache to the users. You guys know what a cache is? Yeah, I didn't ask you guys if you were technical or not. I assumed you are technical and you know computers. I was giving a talk to some doctors once and they were staring at me. Well, there were 2 lead doctors. So, yeah, effectively the bandwidth that Google was using, that the ISP was using to Google in London, remained the same, right? So the cost of the ISP didn't increase, but the amount of traffic they were able to serve increased 10 times. And then what Google did is, Google consists, by the way, of 30% of the world's traffic, between 25 to 30%. Google is bigger than the whole continent of Africa when it comes to internet traffic. They're like 20 times bigger than the whole continent of Africa. 10 times. So Google set up a POP in Mombasa. So now an ISP, to access Google's traffic, doesn't have to go to London. They just go to Mombasa, which is the local fiber connection, right? So the ISP effectively now doesn't have to pay CCOM or Teams to access Google. What does that mean? The costs for the ISP have reduced by 30%, because 30% of the traffic, they don't have to pay anyone to get that 30% of traffic. So similarly, if we start moving all our content back here, that's another 15-20% that we can localize and we can have served off the fiber here. And that's what now reduces the internet prices. That's effectively how you get cheaper internet than what you already have. That and having more users on the internet. Yeah. So in a summary, I think that's kind of the stages that we've gone through for the internet in Kenya, where we started with, you know, the interesting thing is when we had that 32 kilobits per second product, the banks were like, no, we need something lower, you know, because they needed a product for the ATMs, and it was too expensive to get the 32 kilobits per second. So that's why we had to create a 16 kilobit per second product, so that ATM transactions could work. Yeah, and then now I think the internet is a very different place from when we started out. Some of the lessons to learn is kind of, you know, the spirit. If you see, a lot of the guys who built the internet was ISPs. The ISPs were made of people like us who, you don't give them a lot of capital to buy servers and routers and nice toys. So you have to be innovative. You have to hack your way around Linux systems, get them to roll out the services that the customers want, and it's loads of fun, right? It's like working in a startup while being paid a salary. It's nice. Yeah, if you look at I think, I don't have the latest figures on the capacity, but I think the last statistic I can probably share is when I came into Wananchi in 2006, we were buying about 30 megabits of satellite bandwidth. Right now, Wananchi is doing close to 10 gigabits of internet bandwidth and fiber. That's how much growth you've seen between 2006 and today, just by giving people some fiber. Yeah. I'll take questions, I think, now. I hope you've understood. Yeah, I'll take questions from anyone who has. Yeah. It's a bit scary. And I'm saying it's a bit scary not because of the statistics we know, but Kenya, like in any other place, 10% or even 5% of the users use up 80% of the bandwidth. Across the whole world, 5 to 10% of the users, typically people who sit in places like this, use up 80% of the bandwidth in the world. So, from that aspect, Kenya is the same as everyone else. There were some recent statistics that people were doing some Google trend analysis, and Kenya is the top country when it comes to searches for porn. So that's what Kenyans do. It's actually very different. Like 30% of the traffic goes to Google. A lot of the traffic goes to Microsoft, Apple, Facebook. Whenever there's an iOS update, traffic peaks all over Kenya. So yeah, there's that. I think the breakdown on protocols and websites visited and all that is pretty standard across. It's just that 80% that people do P2P and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the implication for us?
The implication for you as developers. There was a backend. This was the backend held at Jacaranda. I don't even know if you guys were born then. No, that was 5 years ago. And that backend was supposed to give a talk on where are all the developers, right? Because we had just launched some of the Zuku products. So now you could buy internet for 2,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings. What we've been hearing all along, what I've been hearing, is developers are not developing because there's no internet. Right? So my talk was titled, "Where are all the developers?" But when I started talking, everyone started asking me, "Oh, internet is cheap. How much is it? And this package, and this package, and this package." So the whole talk became about which ISP has which internet package. But that's the thing. The excuse, I think, 5 years ago was we don't have internet, so we can't develop. I think the environment is totally different, and what you can do now is massively different than what you could do 5 years ago. I think the challenge still, as far as infrastructure goes, is in the really rural areas and so on. But I think there's tons of problems around here that we can solve that use connectivity, because connectivity is reliable, right? It's just like Equity Bank grew because they invested in IT systems. There's a lot of other businesses that can invest in IT systems, and some of these IT systems need to be homegrown. And I think the key thing is understand connectivity, understand what you can do with connectivity, take advantage of that, and the world is changing also connectivity-wise. And this is why 3G can never become our primary source of connectivity, because what's going to happen when people start communicating with holograms in the US, because they have gigabit fiber paths? What are we going to do with our 3G connections? Like, how much bandwidth does a hologram take? You know, so we'll always be left behind if we're not matching the infrastructure spend. So the world is changing, you know, with more connectivity, more connected apps, and it will be a while also before we get there, but guys should start thinking ahead. The other thing as developers is, again, with understanding how the internet works and how it's important for your application to be closer to your users, things like that, right? Understanding things like cloud services, understanding how you can spin up your application, make it scalable, use sort of the advances that have happened in computing to your advantage. Yes.
Yeah, two questions. First, we know that YouTube is generating a lot of revenue, and now Kenyans are hoping they make even more money.
Yeah.
Because of this internet availability. As a company in this sector, what probably are you doing in terms of investment to ensure that YouTube is being used, but probably because I've seen a lot of academic material as well on YouTube. So in terms of awareness and just letting people know that apart from what you are searching for, we can also get this. And the second question, do you have any offshoots in terms of Wananchi or Zuku? Because I know that at some point, after training, like staff and some people like to take off. Have you, as a company, worked on building those guys who leave, or you simply destroy them?
So for the first question, I think as far as YouTube and the stuff they're doing, there's really no platform like that. But with them to be innovative and to scale at this stage is also becoming a challenge because because of the amount of users they have, the amount of content they have. I think they'll be innovative in a certain space. What you can do as a local provider, if you like, for example, if you're a developer that's doing apps or anything that is bandwidth intensive, something that uses voice, something that uses video, that stuff is bandwidth intensive. It makes sense to localize it, and there are certain things that we are doing on that space where we make it easier for content providers, because we have digital TV now. The amount of people producing content is increasing every day. I think that's going to continue. You need to make it easy for the guys who are producing the content and the guys who are doing the content to host their content and deliver it to more people, especially local people, because that's where the bulk of their audience is. Yeah. For the second question, I've had an interesting experience when it comes to, and I can talk about managing my teams. I'm the one who left. The team is still there. So it's a bit on the reverse, but it's always a challenge. And I think finding the right mix is important. But the biggest challenge every entrepreneur, every business has today is hiring good people. And I think, sometimes the interview process may be messed up. Sometimes it's just, when people are coming out of university, high school, etc., they're clueless, right? And I think a lot of people, that's why they look for experience, they look for this, that. So it becomes really hard to hire people. Well, but the other thing also is, from our perspective, we find it very difficult to hire good people. You'll find We'll interview 10 people, 20 people, and then you'll find one person that stands out, right? And it's not about skills or anything else. It's just about how switched on people are and how their attitude is towards, the interview process and your company and what you're doing, and also towards what they've learned and how they are applying it, right? I think we've got a very theoretical education system which causes that outcome. So if we can reach out to people in high school, for example, before they get to university and get drunk, it's too late, but if we reach out to people in high school and try to change how they think about their career, tell them about what a career is, etc., it'll make them make better decisions when they're choosing university and then as they go through university. So it's a challenge that we have, and I think that's the biggest challenge. Once you hire the right people, it's actually very easy to grow your staff, develop your staff, because when you are doing, like we were the first ones to lay overhead fiber in Kenya. We're the first ones to do video in Kenya. We built our own Zuku movies channels, right? That was all the team that got together, figured it out, and built all this stuff. We built satellite TV uplinks. So now we have Zuku TV covering 30 countries. That was all done by the team that was here. When you give people interesting work like that, they don't need anything else. You keep them happy, obviously. You pay them and stuff. But, but really, I think when you get the right people and they're driven by the passion and the work, that's always enough. At least in an environment, in a fast-paced environment like what we have. When it comes to a bigger company, it's a bit different. The dynamics, the culture, everything is very different in a big company than in a startup. Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, but where you ended is exactly where my question still lies.
Yeah.
In terms of, because Zuku is basically expansionist, right? And you want to reach as more clientele as possible. So is there any part of the service as we go down that is outsourced, or that will let other businesses grow in as well, so that you focus on your more strategic issues?
Yeah, I mean, the installations and all that is outsourced. The construction of the plant itself is outsourced. The content that runs on the TV channel is content that is bought. So that's a new industry that we actually created, because before Zuku Non was actually either co-producing and financing shows or buying shows from local producers. So we kind of created that and allowed people to, a content producer who created a TV series knew that he has a market to actually sell his TV series to and get it out to viewers and stuff. So that's some of the things that are outsourced. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just curious, how did you end up with the name Zuku?
Ask Fadi of the Ark. I don't know how he came up with it. Maybe he smoked something. No, it was, they presented it to us. They were looking for a name that hadn't been used before. And they wanted something that was African sounding. So they probably started with Zulu and then they went to the next letter. I don't know the thinking process. I'm not a marketing guy, but the ARC came up with that concept. And when they presented it, I think everyone except the chairman of the board was sold on the idea. Yeah. Yes.
The way you look at it, exactly how will increasing the number of users increase the, how exactly did it reduce the cost of internet, considering that with increase of users comes the need for bandwidth?
Well, the need for bandwidth is only from 5% of the users that are doing torrents. The rest of the users use pretty little bandwidth, but increasing users leads to more eyeballs. The challenge you have with running web services in Kenya, and this is what companies that come in from outside don't really understand or maybe realize. It's hard to run a web or an e-commerce business when you only have a certain number of users. Right? When it comes to the internet space, increasing the number of users just means that there's now more users, but the dynamics are better, right? If you look at statistics, the reason that Zuku is able to sell 50 megabits per second for 10,000 shillings, like I told you, Zuku buys 1 megabit, off the internet for maybe $50. So to sell 50 at 10,000 shillings, what happens is there's a whole lot of dynamics into play. You basically take all your users, they're all connecting to the internet, but guess what? Maybe only 10% are actually on the internet at any given time. So if you have 100,000 users, maybe only 10,000 are actually on the internet at that particular time. So already you can start seeing how the dynamics play out. And this is what broadband providers all over the world do. And this is why when ISPs market to you dedicated internet and all that, it's exactly that. It's all lies, right? There's no such thing as dedicated internet. The internet is a pool of computers, is a pool of devices, is a pool of people all connecting together via different interconnections. There is no way, it's like saying in a swimming pool, I'm dedicating this bucket of water for you. It doesn't exist, right? So think of it like that. The internet is like a swimming pool. Yeah. So the more users you get, the bigger the size of the swimming pool, the more dynamics you can get. Any other questions? Yeah.
Approximately, if you can answer, how long do you think it will take for people to fully embrace the internet? Because a big problem we face is they're developing solutions and they're really solving a problem, but people locally prefer USSD, or when you're going to interview people, they say internet, Facebook is for children. They don't really try to access your product or the internet. So how do you think it will take people to be interested in it?
I think the people who think that they are not children are very lost. I think everyone has to think of themselves as a child. That's how you remain innovative. But how many users do you think are on the internet in Kenya? What do you guys think? What is your target market?
10 million.
10 million? Anyone else? 8 million. If we keep going, it will reduce. I think there's about 2 million.
Active users.
Yeah. About 3-4 years ago, this is from looking at Google, Facebook, how many people are active, in a given month. And a few years ago, about 4 years ago, that number was about 500,000. The projected has grown since then, so it's sitting at about 2-3 million, which is not a lot when you're building, because imagine if you only get 10% of that market, it's 100,000. So when you build your business model, that's probably something to consider. And as far as the size of the target market is concerned, and that's why we have to bring it up, right? Because there's 40 million people if only 2 million are really online, then everyone else is still on SMS and offline. The ways that some of that can change, people may be online but may not be using the internet because of the expensive cost and nature of 3G. So if you unlock and have more unlimited data packages, that will enable more people to get online. The other thing is people can do flexible pricing models. Internet needs to be cheaper, for example, in rural areas, maybe more expensive in the urban areas, so that the guys in the rural areas can use more Facebook. Right? And if they use more Facebook, and that will make guys here use more Facebook, and that will generally increase the number of Facebook users. But that's I think what you need. But it's changing rapidly. I think the guys who do content and stuff have been saying a lot of people, rather than choosing to receive content via SMS, are now choosing to have it delivered via a URL or some sort of online mechanism. But all that said, there's still a market of 100,000 people in Nairobi and Mombasa who have fiber to their home. That's still a big market, right? 100,000 people. We can still do something with that. Yeah, that's my thought. Yes. What, Angani? I thought I did. If you want, we can. I don't know how much time we have, but we can give a presentation on our products. Essentially, what we do is cloud services. So whatever you get from Amazon or Rackspace, you can get from us. Yeah. So we lease virtual machines. So you can lease a virtual machine just like you do on Amazon. Then what we've realized is guys don't want virtual machines. Developers want virtual machines, right? Because you need a root server. You always need root access. But other businesses don't need virtual machines. They wouldn't know what to do with them. So we've gone ahead and created several packages that run off our cloud infrastructure. Things like backup. So we can offer a backup solution that's just like Dropbox. It's just that it's working on local servers. And we'll probably launch it as a retail product as well. So you guys can try it out if you're interested in having a Dropbox equivalent, but on a local server, which means that it's much faster to upload and download. One MP3 takes like 5 seconds. A whole video can take. Patrick does a lot of. Patrick, how long does it take? Patrick works at Angani. He's a site reliability engineer. Yeah. Yeah. So the backup product, is good for businesses, and we had to package it. So we had to get something that made the functionality and stuff like Dropbox. The core infrastructure is still running on virtual machines somewhere, but people want the front end. We also do hosted email services, so Exchange, Zimbra, so you can get hosted email. What we have is we have a software as a service marketplace. So with the software as a service marketplace, if you're a developer that has an app that you want to provide to people, and it's a local app running on Angani, we'll put it up. So these are common utilities that people will be using. So we've got a few of the web hosting companies have moved their content locally, like ESP Directory. So we do web hosting, email hosting, domain hosting, with them, in the SaaS marketplace. And then we've started to do some nifty products. Like this one product that we give offices that now bundles, and for startups is also useful. So it will bundle your domain and your hosting. it will give you email services as well. And in addition to that, you get a landline number, which is actually a voice over IP number. So it will be a landline number that will ring on your laptop, on your smartphone, and if no one picks up, it can be forwarded to your mobile line. You can have it ring multiple places. When someone calls your company, you will say, welcome to Chula Limited. Is it limited? Okay. Welcome to Chula Limited. Please wait for the next available caller, or please hold, something like that. So you can get IVR messages, you get voicemail, and it all runs on an app on your laptop. So you can also then take, your landline with you wherever you go. There's a smartphone app as well. So I traveled last month, and I could make calls as if I was in Kenya. So that's something that you can get for you as a startup. And calls between your extensions are free, so you can call each other as long as you have an internet connection. You can call out, etc. So that's kind of a package that we're giving small businesses. Yeah, we wanted for a small business, you don't have to invest money in getting a PODX, buying a server, buying the whole thing. You should be able to do everything with your laptop and your phone. That's the idea. So, and we'll continue now, with developers coming up with nifty applications, thinking about what you can do with the local servers. Because once you see those download speeds and stuff, you want to do more. We now work with guys and launch more services in the marketplace. Yeah. Yeah. We can send a presentation on the product. Yeah. There's a new website. We're revamping the website. So now we can talk about all the things that we offer in addition to just the virtual machine. Yes.
My question is, what are the areas in the Kenyan IT sector do you think there are opportunities for innovation?
Everything. I think everything. The challenge with Kenya, like I said, on one hand, we talked about, one disruptive player is what it takes to actually cause disruption. On the other hand, when there's a good idea, you will see 100 Kenyans going and building businesses around the same idea, right? So PRSP, nice idea. Thousands of people started businesses doing PRSP. Payments, nice idea. Thousands of people started doing payments. And all of them want to do parking at Nairobi City Council. So, it's, I think there's lots of opportunities. I think there's a lot of real opportunity and real money in is understanding businesses' solutions. If you're an IT solutions company, or even if you're a developer that's developing apps, especially apps geared towards business, if you sit down and understand the business and find the problems of the business that you can then solve and add real value to that business, that's the best kind of app, right? And that will make you money immediately because people will buy it. What am I talking about? IT for a lot of people has been, I have this product and you have to buy it because it's the best thing ever. But for a CEO or an MD for a company, he doesn't necessarily want that. He wants to know, how will this product make me more money? Or how will this product show me how much money I'm making? Or how will this product save me costs? How will it automate certain things that I'm doing? So when that's when you're providing real value to businesses, when you understand what the CEO's thinking is and then develop stuff that's based on that. So I think the B2B space has a lot of room because there's so many businesses that are still running, their servers, email, they have applications that they just pull from someone, and they have a need for automation, for simple workflows, so many businesses run without accounting because accounting is complicated. Yeah. Simple things like that. But if you can really understand what a business does and you build something for it, there's still a lot of market there. Cool. Another question? Yeah.
So the question, I think most of us would ask you, how much is your package? Like the last one, why you have
The office package starts from, how much is it? Now, it starts from 500 shillings to 1,000 shillings a month, depending on how many email accounts like you're getting or how many users you have. But for a 5-user setup, it starts from about 1,000 shillings a month. Yeah.
So you have unlimited calls?
Well, it's unlimited calls within your network and your office. But when you're calling Safaricom lines and stuff, that's charged at the normal rate. Yeah. So what you get is you get a 020 number. So that's your landline number. When people call you, you'll get a welcome message. And then it will be forwarded to, you can have extensions behind that number. So you can have 5 extensions depending on the numbers of your team. But what it does is it gives you that professional look, right? And then it's always, especially for customer service, that number is always available to the user. And then there's always someone to pick it because it will ring on all your team members' phones. So what we do is include that PBX service and everything. And then the calls that you make, for example, outgoing calls to Safaricom or Airtel, those are charged at the normal 3 shillings, 4 shillings a minute. Yeah. If you call Zuku, those are free calls. Yeah. We're adding some more networks where you can call for free. But the bulk of users in Kenya are on Safaricom. Yeah. So the whole office package with the domain, the email, and the voice starts from around 1,000 shillings.
The other time, like if you don't pay for calls, you get disconnected.
Yeah, I mean, as in the down payment. No, that's so you pay monthly, but it's for 12 months. Because the domain is paid annually, the other services are monthly. Yeah. The domain prices are supposed to come down. This is interesting information. So they are going to drop. Right now, if you want to get a domain, it costs anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 shillings. A .co.ke, they're dropping the price to 500 shillings for a .co.ke domain for 1 year. Yeah. So go and register. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard of the free Wi-Fi city in Kenya, which I think it was a flop in the first instance. I don't know what they're doing now. But,
Yeah.
But in your opinion, how does, with the issue of with regard to Wi-Fi, how does Nairobi compare with Kigali?
Kigali is also the thing with people who are on, is it the east or the western side of Uganda, Rwanda, those guys know how to market a lot, and then there's nothing when you actually go there. So I was talking to the guys who did the Kigali project, and it was similar, right? It was not really planned or executed well, so they marketed it as free Wi-Fi city and everything. But what they were doing is they were basically regionalizing the city and telling ISPs that you put Wi-Fi spots here and we'll fund it. But the thing that people don't realize is you don't just have to fund the build out, but you then have to fund the ongoing internet costs as well, which is expensive. That's the most expensive part of the whole thing. So what happened in Kigali was people put up a few hotspots, not that many, and then it all went away. In Nairobi, I think what's happening for Wi-Fi is quite interesting. The project I was involved in for the last 1 or 2 years was Wananchi Wi-Fi, and we rolled out over 300 hotspots all around Nairobi and Mombasa. And it was a paid service, which discouraged people, but it was very popular at universities. The universities didn't mind paying, 50 bob a day to get unlimited internet. So what's happening in addition to now the Wananchi Wi-Fi, which is now Zuku Wi-Fi, what's happening in addition to that is Safaricom is going to be doing Wi-Fi, Liquid Telecom is doing Wi-Fi. So I think you will get more and more Wi-Fi hotspots. And really the growth of Wi-Fi hotspots, if you look at the US market and stuff, a lot of it, rather than the operators, is brought about by the businesses themselves. So that's going to happen. Now, Wi-Fi as a technology, if you use it, Wi-Fi has different iterations. As a hotspot technology, it's very difficult to cover a town or a city with Wi-Fi. It will outdoors for mobile devices, right? So whoever is, municipal Wi-Fi projects have failed the world over because of that internet cost of the service. And in addition to that, it's hard to provide coverage to mobile devices out in the street or in the whole city. But I believe there's a space for Wi-Fi as a technology so in the city, it's going to take off in hotspots, places like this, coffee shops, restaurants, malls, all that stuff. We need Wi-Fi in as many places as possible. Technology, I think Wi-Fi will cover the space between, I think the big cities are going to have fiber connections. So Nairobi, Mombasa, maybe even Nakuru and Eldoret. The big cities will have fiber. The secondary and tertiary cities, places like Nanyuki, Meru, some of those places, I think Wi-Fi will play an important role because Wi-Fi can behave like Wi-Fi. It's essentially, it's just that it uses free and open spectrum. So the cost of spectrum is not there. To deliver broadband in those towns, I think you will need Wi-Fi to be used for that. That's what I believe. And then now the rural areas will be 3G and whatever else comes along. The guys who are doing the Nakuru, I think they're now resurrecting it. I think the Liquid Telecom guys are involved now. So they're revamping the network. But it was a classic case. Like there was money for setup. They tried to set up a citywide coverage. That doesn't work. So now they're redoing the network and then bringing it back up. But they had to have someone who would donate bandwidth. At least so they get X minutes free or something like that. Yeah. Yes.
I'm an electrical engineer student. I haven't learned yet the Wi-Fi system, how it works. But my question is here in the university, around the hours we are supposed to be having Wi-Fi. Yet the connection really is poor at times. So why does it? What's the reason for that?
Because everyone who tries to deploy Wi-Fi goes for what the vendors tell them. The vendors tell them we have the most powerful Wi-Fi radio. Put one and it will cover the whole campus. To be honest, for you to have real coverage, Wi-Fi is worse than cellular. And what do you see Safaricom doing with cellular? You see them putting, the antennas on every floor in a building. And the reason they are doing that is, a bit for coverage, but more for capacity reasons. It's the same thing with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, realistically, the limit is not how much power you can send out. You will see the University of Nairobi signal from town. Because you put the antenna on the roof, and use as far as possible. They did a bit of intelligent network here because you have lots of design and the placement of the Wi-Fi access points. The way I believe Wi-Fi should be done is you get the cheapest radios and you just put as many of them as possible and just make sure that they're not interfering with each other, because that gives you, each radio has a certain capacity. So if you have more radios, you have more capacity on the network. And then a Wi-Fi radio really covers about 50 meters. You know, 100 meters maybe if you're lucky, but realistically about 50 meters. So everywhere you have to have these indoor radios. The other thing Wi-Fi doesn't do is go through concrete. So that kills us here. Yeah. So those are some of the things that the campus can do, is add more cheaper access points, you know, the places that have black holes. Yeah.
But does it depend on the number of people using it?
That's a factor. If capacity is a access point can have 50 people on it, and bandwidth-wise, it has maybe 50 Mbps. So if you have one guy torrenting here, then that takes out the whole access point. But you can build in filters and stuff for that. The way you'll see if it's related to number of users is if the connection varies based on the time of day, right? Because people move around based on what time of day it is. So if you see that at a particular time of the day the network is getting congested or is becoming slow, that's because of the number of people. But if you find that you have only 2 bars or 1 bar, that's more a factor of the network design. No one has any questions on startups or business or something like that? Yeah.
So, my last question.
Yeah.
Do you offer training to students, maybe internship opportunities?
We do internship opportunities. Yeah. So right now we have one position we're hiring for. If you feel you're exceptional, you can always write to jobs at Angani and tell us why you're exceptional. Then we'll interview you and make an exception. But we'll have, what we do is we basically bring on, the thing with internships in Kenya is it's a 3-month program, right? In 3 months, there's not much a company can benefit from an intern. But what we prefer doing is we take graduates, and the graduates then we train them up, they build themselves through. Because the problem with the type of stuff we're doing, you know, when ISPs existed, there was demand for people that did Linux. Now everyone has to be a developer. Developers don't need to know Linux, so there's very few system administrators today. It's kind of a dying breed. So we want to encourage more people to become system administrators and specialize in Linux, Unix systems. So we take on interns, train them up, and we take them on as full-time employees. We just train them as they become better and better. They grow with the company. Yeah. But our interview process is very rigorous. Yeah.
So any insight on raising funds or stuff?
There's a lot of money in Kenya. There are people who are willing to invest. I think it's just that it's not organized in any form. Yeah. But we found, you know, especially if you have track record, your team is good, people are willing to invest in the team, in good ideas. So I think that's one of the things we'll have to do is find a way to organize the VC space in the VC market. in Kenya. Other places have like forums, circles, things like that, where VCs can get to know each other or can pool their resources. Trying to find big funding is difficult, but if you're looking for small funding, a few 100,000 shillings or even tens of thousands of shillings, depends on what you're looking for. That actually is people locally that can fund good ideas. Yeah. It's just that you have to source them out or find them. Yeah. And they could be sitting around you, right? It's friends, family, other people. Yeah. These guys are too young. Yeah. And then if you're looking for big funding amounts, then I think there's better connections being built with companies outside other places. And then the development sector has traditionally funded a lot of projects as well. So if there are projects that are targeted, not at consumers or retail or business market, but they're targeted more at development, agriculture, health, that sort of thing. That one is the traditional NGO sector is looking for IT-based projects to invest in.
So thank you so much, Yanni. We can give him a lot of applause. I think that was insightful, and most of you have learned a lot of stuff that you can apply on different areas. Thank you so much to Angani. Thank you so much to Riyani. And thank you so much to C4D Lab for hosting us. Thank you to you guys for coming up today. So the video can be found on a certain URL that I'll circulate to you. So if this is your first time here, make sure you leave your email so that you can get the video. And it's okay to share with other guys who are not here today. Thank you for coming. So don't leave so quick. Know who is your next, who you are seated next to, and make connection. I understand investors are seated here, so you can make good connections for that. Thank you, guys.